This week on the TT show, Apple and NVIDIA busted using YouTube videos for AI training, Intel's new CPU troubles, RTX 5090 updates, PC game install sizes to be reduced by up to 70%, NVIDIA powering the Las Vegas Sphere, Windows XP on iPhone, ASUS's new $499 keyboard, and Skyrim gets a jaw-dropping fresh coat of paint with 3,100 mods. Let's get into it. Welcome back to the TT show. My name is Jack Connor. I'm a hardware editor over at Tweaktown, and today I'm joined by my co-host,
Kosta Andriadis, gaming hardware editor at Tweaktown.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello.
What is cracking?
Oh, not too much. Even though it's listed as the last story to talk about, but yeah, I'm just sitting here testing a $499 ASUS keyboard.
Oh, that is the new. Is it? It's called Zephyrus.
The ROG Azoth Extreme.
Azoth
This is the one
Extreme.
we saw at Computex.
Zephyrus is the laptop, right?
Yeah, that's their laptop
Yeah,
brand.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I know we're going to get into it at the end of the show, and
Oh, we can get it out of the way now.
no, we'll save. We'll tease the listeners. We'll get it.
Yep.
We'll
All
save
right.
it. We'll save it for the end. But just quick thoughts on it.
It's
Like,
impressive.
Give me
It
two
is-
dot points.
It feels great to type with, but like I don't think anybody was expecting that price point.
No, there you go. All right, well, let's move on. We do have a jam-packed show ahead of us today. Lots and lots of stories. We've got, as you would have heard in the intro, everything from CPU, GPU, a big AI kerfuffle, 5090
little bit of everything.
updates. Yeah, a little bit of everything. So let's start off with Intel CPU troubles. Talk to me about this.
Yeah, so it's been going on for about 6 months now. There have
Yeah.
been reports for the most previous, I guess the most current Intel CPUs, the 13th and 14th gen, but we're talking about the flagship models like, the 13900K KS, the 14900K KS. They're big boys. They're ones that draw a lot of power. Now, whether or not it's related to that, who knows? But
Right.
about 6 months ago, there's been like just stability issues cropping up with people saying there's issues with these flagship Core i9 processors causing crashing and things like that. And then there was a whole thing with like Intel initially were blaming motherboard makers for not using recommended settings or, for the CPUs, that they were just letting them, they were doing the wrong thing. And then there was an Intel investigation, and it's been going on and on for a while. And but over the last week, it's kind of blown up a bit because there's been a lot of reports specifically from game developers and game data coming out saying that these Intel CPUs are crashing and failing and causing more errors by like a magnitude of compared to compared to the AMD Ryzen CPUs. And so there's like one developer specifically that I highlighted in the story, Alderon Games. It's an Australian-based developer, and they've got a pretty cool-looking game called Path of Titans. It's kind of like a survival game where you take on the role of a dinosaur, and it looks
Wow.
actually pretty cool. But
Unreal?
Basically, I believe so.
Looks unreal.
Yeah, it looks really cool. I'm not too sure what engine and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
essentially, it's it's like a survival game, so it's online, like Ark. You have your servers and et cetera, et cetera. So apparently they were running their servers on Intel CPUs, these flagship CPUs. And they came out to announce that they're swapping all their servers to AMD CPUs because Intel this is their words, is selling defective CPUs. So they're outright calling their 13th and 14th gen flagships, the 13900K and 14900K, defective, like as in there is no good one out there.
Why are they buying those CPUs for servers? Aren't they? They're more gaming specific CPUs,
Yeah.
aren't they? Like the K series is more is an indicator for overclockable, or it's like it's already has a higher base clock.
Yeah, that's right. But the thing is, you can run like game servers on any CPUs, and they could just be
They just
like an
wanted the
indie-
best,
an
I suppose.
indie developer just building their own servers and stuff like that.
Yeah,
But
fair
basically,
enough.
they've been saying, but they say it filters down to their game as well. So they have,
Wow. Okay.
their player base, and they're saying that their the 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 reports that they're getting from, like when you play a game, usually you opt in to say, I agree to send crash data or whatever to the developer. They can see what's going on.
I always do that.
Yeah. And because it helps developers figure out issues because PCs are so complicated.
Absolutely. Yeah. And especially if the game is like in early access or something like that. Like, and I've bought it in early access. I always, to anyone out there that is listening, definitely do that if you're playing early access games, because it's such a small thing and helps developers a lot with optimization. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, so they're basically saying that thousands of crashes are happening on Intel CPUs, on the 13th and 14th gen CPUs, and based on their servers as well, experiencing constant crashes, taking the entire server down. And even their developers that are working on the game, the developers that have these CPUs, the 13th and 14th gen, are reporting frequent instability when building and working on the game. And it's also causing like SSD and memory corruption. So like
Wow.
basically
Okay.
destroying some of their work. So they could waste a day based on like issues or whatever it is. And so and so they're basically saying that, like their solution is that we're swapping all our servers to AMD, which experience 100 times fewer crashes compared to Intel CPUs that we've found to be defective.
100 times.
Yep. And anybody that has this game that has one of these 13th and 14th gen CPUs will be getting a pop-up message in game advising them that, if your game is crashing or there's having issues, it's because of your CPU. Now, where it gets a little bit, they're obviously fed up, and this is all from like the founder of the studio, Matthew Castles, and he's basically saying that this is the quote, we have observed that CPUs initially working well deteriorate over time, eventually failing. The failure rate we have observed from our own testing is nearly 100%, indicating that it's only a matter of time before affected CPUs fail. This issue is getting attention from news outlets and has been noted by Fortnite and Rad Game Tools, which powers decompression behind Unreal Engine. So it's basically saying that, based on what they're saying, that it's basically almost 100% failure rate for these CPUs.
Okay, I have a few questions.
Which is kind of like, this is like, is this anecdotal? But then there's more.
That was my first question. Is it just this game? And my second question is related to the power problems or reports we were seeing earlier, because I think I did a story on Intel coming out and saying, weren't they like shifting the blame slightly to motherboard manufacturers? And
That's
then,
right.
motherboard manufacturers had to roll out firmware updates for these higher end CPU, for the higher end CPUs. And didn't the firmware updates undervolt the CPUs?
Yeah. And then Intel came and says, no, you shouldn't be doing that because that lowered performance. But
Yes.
and then they released their own recommendations. Profile. Yeah. But like there is like it's a little bit of a gray area because Intel hasn't like come out to really take ownership of the issue. And I'm expecting
and it's
that
going on for so long as well.
They're going to kind of have to, because there was also a video, a YouTube video that kind of like broke it down from L1 Tech, I think it is. And basically looking at like game data, they saw that like based on like the report rate is like 70% of failures are with Intel and 30% are with AMD CPUs. And this is like on the server side and on the desktop side. And there's so much like, there's so many like just individual reports and just like individual games. So like Overwatch players with these flagship CPUs are reporting crashing. And there was initially like even NVIDIA came out to put a little note to say like if you're experiencing crashing, it's because of your CPU, not because of your GPU, even though it comes up with like a NVIDIA or like, like a GPU, like, like a graphics error, but like, the CPU is involved. The developers of Warframe, that the massive free-to-play game that's been available for ages, that Destiny-style action RPG shooter thing, one of their developers posted that, pretty much all the crashes are coming from, all the errors are coming from these CPUs.
Now, this to me, after you saying that it's across multiple games and not just this game, and it also backs up the previous reports where I can't remember the titles that were mentioned about like maybe 4 or 5 months ago, because it was game crashes. I'm pretty sure it was Counter-Strike as well. Yeah, from memory was one of them.
Like the first thing.
This
like
sounds more like a problem with the node, like this batch of CPUs, not necessarily firmware, because they would have fixed it by now, right?
Yeah. It's basically, so like game server companies are switching to AMD. Data center operators are switching to AMD because of these issues, because like they're used everywhere.
But don't you think it's a problem with this?
Even on like the server chipsets as well, like that are using the same architecture. So it's like on the desktop side, you've got the gamers with these CPUs reporting crashes, and then either servers running these CPUs are reporting the same issue, or servers running like chipsets, Intel chipsets with a similar.
What NM
like
is this generation? Is it still 7? Because they were stuck on 7 for a while.
Yeah, I think it is. It's the same. They'll just be like the 13th and 14th gen were pretty much the same. One was just a refresh.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the 12th, 13th, and 14th were all pretty much using the same.
Isn't it 7 plus? Didn't they codename it something? Because it was like I know that Intel was stuck on 7 for a long time, but I'm like, is it still 7?
Yes, it's built on the 7 nanometer Intel 4 node.
Yeah. Okay. So from these reports, and look, if it's happening on the server side as well, that to me sounds like that entire wafer, essentially.
It sounds like
it's
getting to a point where like, okay, we're gonna have to do a product recall almost. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it sounds like the product itself is. That would be like so major, but like
I know.
But the thing is, there's so many reports of it now. Like, like if companies are like switching to AMD, and gamers now as well are reporting that I've had enough. I'm just switching to the 7800 X3D, the good gaming CPU on the Ryzen side. And like AMD's not like at fault. Like no CPU like is not going to have. Is like every CPU is going to have issues, right? There's always going to be like faulty parts as well. Like, if you produce 1 million CPUs, there's going to be a small percentage that might have like defects in them, and they will be under warranty. They'll get replaced. But then like another outlet, Hardware Times, is reporting that that they were denied a replacement because they kept having issues with their CPUs, and and then Intel denied the RMA request. So it's like so now it's also becoming like a PR nightmare, right? So like you go back to like like major PR issues. Like Samsung had issues with Galaxy phones, small percentage of them, and then that had that flow-on effect of make sure you turn your Galaxy phone if you're going on a plane or whatever the case is.
Yeah.
Apple's had a few things with like software-wise, like maps. Microsoft, has blunders with like certain hardware that's failed to take off. But this one is a little bit different because it's, it's just like the new flagship CPU from Intel, and it should just be like, like the 10900K, 11900K should just be the same thing, a very popular gaming CPU or a high-end enthusiast CPU with no issues. But now it seems like they have to respond, but also take ownership of it, because it's becoming like a PR nightmare, right? Like it's basically all we're seeing now is just reports, like the one I posted, like the ones from YouTube channels doing deep dives, from other outlets across Europe and America and other countries, all reporting on the same thing. And they're all reporting with, Intel hasn't really provided a recent comment on what's been happening, and they kind of need to.
I agree entirely. Yeah, this is getting. Imagine a recall, man, and the.
Oh yeah, I know.
Then the new Ryzen generation is around the corner, and all of this bad press coming out right now is only going to bolster those unit sales. So, like, why would anyone? It's such a brand hit. Like these problems.
Yeah, that's right. It's damaging to the brand. Yep.
Yeah.
And if somebody's saying they got nearly 100% failure rate, and that's a small sample size, right? That's like, this is a developer. Like how many CPUs are they realistically going to have? 10, 20,
true.
30, 40, 50, 100. But even if it's like 1,000, that's like a small number compared to the amount that is probably out there. But at the end of the day, if they're saying, hey, we're seeing almost nearly 100% failure rate, something's going on. And then we're seeing reports throughout the entire industry, like especially on the gaming side. So they have to kind of like, I don't know, like they have to like come out and do something.
Yeah, well, we're gonna have to keep our eyes on that because that is a massive story. And yeah, look, for me, just to put a button on it, the server side and the gaming side having the same issues is a big indicator that it's a node issue. This generation of CPUs, maybe even just the higher end. Well, it appears right now just the higher end ones are suffering from this problem. And if I was to guess, I would say it is those power problems we heard about.
Well, it's something.
A few months. It's something.
It's like how they've designed it to use the same node to push more power through, to cram more on there, maybe, or whatever they've done. Like it sounds
to try
like
and keep up with AMD.
There's some sort of issue.
Yeah. Well, we'll keep our eyes on it and let you guys know. Let's move on to the next story on the menu here. AMD doing something incredible for gamers.
Yeah. So this is a technical paper that they've published based on new technology called neural texture block compression. And so it's going to be open source, and it's AMD's GPU division developing this technology. And essentially the best way to think about it would be
Silicon Valley.
Yeah. Middle out compression.
That's a bit of inside baseball. We'll just sidebar it real quick. When Kosta and I were traveling to Taiwan for Computex, he was telling me he was rewatching Silicon Valley for the third time?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
And for those that haven't seen the show, a massive aspect of it is they create a ridiculously optimized compression algorithm.
Yeah, it's all about like lossless compression but it's just a fun comedy series.
It's fantastic. It is fantastic, especially if you're into the stuff that we talk about on this show. It is right up your alley. Yeah. But AMD has made something similar.
Yeah. So like this is like eventually how it would work. So it's new technology that basically would reduce the install sizes for games by up to 70%.
That's incredible.
Now that would mean that Call of Duty's 150 gig install would go down to 45 gig.
Something reasonable,
which would be massive, right? So what does this
for that game?
So how or why? Well, basically, the way that games work is that like the way that anything works, like with media online or just on PCs. Like so, you got like an image, right? And it's usually a JPEG or whatever file format. Like every format is compressed, right? So like a PNG, like they're all compressed. Like a raw image file, like if you open like a raw like Photoshop image or whatever, and it could be like 300 meg, and even that's got like some like compression on it, but that's like super high quality. But then you can get that down to like like a fraction of the size using compression, and the quality's still there. And all games use the same sort of compression. It's called block compression, and there's formats that they all use, and it's to reduce the size of textures and things like that. But even with that block compression, game worlds that have tens of thousands of 4K high resolution textures now, based on back in the early days of gaming, or like 3D gaming, like texture sizes were small because the resolution wasn't as high. But still using the same sort of compression, 4K textures are now just massive. So that's a problem. So that's why you got games that, if you see like 200 gig, that doesn't mean that they're lazy. It just means that there's just so much data, like especially with like textures and even like videos and things like that. There's just nothing they can do with it. So AMD's technology would be essentially to compress that using a new technique that works with the GPU as well to decompress on the fly. And basically, the whole goal of it is like, the Silicon Valley thing where it's a better compression ratio compared to block compression. And it's like a drastically better compression ratio.
Wow.
And a lot of it is, neural texture block compression. Yes, there is an AI component, and it would free up VRAM as well. So like, all these 4K textures, like,
they're very heavy on the VRAM side.
Yeah, like you'll notice that like a lot of games, like, if you've got an 8 gig GPU or a 16 gig GPU, and even though like their raw performance might be similar, if you're playing the same game and let's say you put the texture quality to very high or ultra in The Last of Us, that means it's like a fully uncompressed version of the texture. And the thing is, like, the game developers have to do different versions of the textures based on, the different the quality as well. So that's why the games get bigger as well. So then, with smaller file sizes, then that's less VRAM. So like a game that would need 12 gig of VRAM because of like the 4K textures may only need 6 gig or 7 gig now. So like it would actually drastically reduce the VRAM footprint. But there is like a catch. There is like still some issues in the full technical paper that they're saying that there is some textures where the loss in image quality is noticeable. That there's areas to improve it. But in most cases, it's a very like-for-like comparison in terms of like the loss in image quality isn't drastic because
That's
like an MP3 compared to like a WAV file. Like one might be 3 megabytes, and then a WAV file is like 70 megabytes or whatever.
Yeah,
and there's a difference in the quality, but it's just getting it to a point where you get like with all compression where it's acceptable. And the trade-off,
this is
like
fantastic.
Like saving 70%.
That's awesome.
Is like a good trade-off. It's like, okay, let's get it to a point where it's like, okay, that looks pretty much on par with what it was before, and so that's good enough.
Yeah. Is this something, because it's just a technical paper at the moment? Is this something that you can see released to developers or like put up on GitHub or something like that?
That's what it's going to be.
Yeah.
So they're basically saying that there is a trade-off between quality and compression ratio, like I just said, but they're going to offer different approaches. There's going to be an aggressive version of it and a conservative version of it, and they're going to leave it up to developers to decide when they're using it, kind of like DLSS, like, they'll be able to choose like a performance mode for it or a quality mode for it, but whatever mode they choose, it'll be a much smaller texture size.
That's fantastic. I'm all about compression because I still think it is. I don't. Maybe lazy isn't the best word, but Call of Duty has no business being 200 gig. Like, it just shouldn't be. Games shouldn't be 200 gig. If internet access globally was at like 500 megabit a second,
but like
or something like that, but people are still cruising around on 50 megabit, 200 gig, and plus like also the console's storage is
sometimes
like
you get the option, right? Like Diablo 4 on PC, if you install it, you can choose just the game, which is like 40, 50 gig, and then you can have the choice to be like 4K texture pack or HD, whatever they call it, high quality texture pack.
Yeah, see, that's all right.
And that's an additional like 75 gig or something like that, which is huge, right? And then Microsoft does it with like, they got the Xbox Series S and the Series X, and the Series S is like a 1440p console and usually just rendering at 1080p. Like games are usually a lot smaller there because they're using the lower quality or just like, just the standard quality. Or I shouldn't say low quality, but the standard quality textures. And then, the Xbox Series X version of the game would be like an extra 50, 60 gig. And that's just because of the textures. Like, it just shows you that a lot of it just is high quality assets.
Really. Absolutely. Yeah. I really hope that this compression
and NVIDIA's working on something similar too. So that's
awesome.
So like, I wouldn't be surprised if their big thing, like I think we speculated last time, was for the 50 series was like DLSS 4 that includes some sort of texture compression.
Yeah, because I suppose these compression algorithms are a response to games like Call of Duty, right? Like that's why they're coming out.
That's the big one. Like, remember when Black Ops 6, the new one, got announced? It was like, oh, it's going to take 300 gig on an Xbox. Like somebody leaked, and it's like, nobody's really surprised because there's games that have already crossed the 200 gig mark, and it just comes down to like high quality textures. And to the general audience, it seems like lazy. It's like, well, why is this game like 200 gig when, like Hades is only in like 4 gig, or like, like smaller games are like a tiny.
Hades is like 2D, dude.
Yeah, I know. But like, like it does, a lot of people like it doesn't compute right. It's like, oh, why is, X game, like why is, whatever, like Minecraft or Fortnite 20 gig and this is like 100.
Yeah.
It just comes down to just assets.
Yep. And that's why we need these compression algorithms. Let's move on to the third story here. This is something that is just unraveling within probably the past, I'd say 24 hours. A report came out that is claiming, I just want to get my link up here for my story. Give me a second. So this is something that we've been talking about on the show for quite some time when it comes to AI models and the ambiguity that is around where all of this data is coming from to train these models. I think we touched on last week, Microsoft's director for AI said that if it's like on the internet, it's pretty much like free to get or something. Like, what did he say
he's like
specifically?
Piracy rules, almost. Oh yeah, like if it's public, then it's up for grabs, basically.
Yeah. Pretty much. Like unless you have IP, like a team of lawyers and proper copyright claim.
Yeah, unless you've got like lawyers.
Yeah, it's pretty much free, which is a crazy thing to say. And now it's starting to come out, at least with Apple and NVIDIA and who's the other one? No, I don't think OpenAI was mentioned in this report. So a report from Proof News expands on an investigation that they did into YouTube videos being used as data to train AI models. And the report found that Apple, NVIDIA, Salesforce, and Anthropic, among others, used a dataset called PILE. Now, this dataset was created by, I want to get the name here. Do you want to try and pronounce that? It's in Eleuther AI.
Oh, Eleuther AI. Yeah, I don't know.
Eleuther AI. And what they have done, and this is where the breach in terms of TOS comes in, they took the transcripts from YouTube videos, and the YouTube videos are from some of the most popular creators on the platform. MKBHD, who has 19 million subscribers, a tech reviewer, one of the biggest voices probably the biggest single most largest tech channel, not including Linus's 40 different channels that bloke does. He is a media I count him as, he's like Channel 9 News when it comes to tech.
Yeah, he's kind of like one of those companies that owns like every newspaper.
Yeah, he's like Rupert Murdoch.
Yeah.
Mr. Beast also had his videos transcribed. Jacksepticeye, PewDiePie, Stephen Colbert, John Oliver, Jimmy Kimmel, and more. So the transcriptions are the subtitle files for the YouTube videos, and according to this report, Big Tech picked up the PILE dataset, which contained these transcripts, and used it to train its AI models. Now, the PILE dataset was open source. It was designed for academic and educational purposes, but It was only in early April, YouTube, and I'm pretty sure we mentioned this on the show. It was in response to OpenAI's. Do you remember the CTO was in that interview? And
Yeah,
she
then
was
they're just saying,
asked,
"We
like,
don't
where
know,
do you use YouTube videos? And she's like,
I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know where we're getting
And
our
then
data from. I'm not too sure.
everyone's like, wait, what? You're the chief technical officer for
Yeah, no,
the
CTO would know.
yeah. Like, and she's like, I'm not sure actually. And everyone's like, okay, all right, you're using YouTube videos.
Because
So
you mentioned in your article that YouTube in April posted something to say that, hey, just as a reminder,
yeah,
it's not legal or it's not, within our terms of service of using YouTube to scrape or download
any shape or form of data from the platform.
from YouTube to use for your own whatever.
Yeah,
or even
you
you're not supposed to if you see something on YouTube, download it. Because there's YouTube downloaders have existed for ages, download it and watch it offline or whatever the thing is. You can download videos off YouTube. That's obviously a no-no. But, it exists. You can do it. So the assumption was always that AI companies got to be doing this. Where are they getting their data from?
Yeah. So the statement that you're referring to, this came from YouTube CEO Neil Mohan, who reminded OpenAI, from a creator's perspective, when a creator uploads their hard work to our platform, they have certain expectations. One of those expectations is that the terms of service is going to be abided by. It does not allow for things like transcripts or video bits to be downloaded, and that is a clear violation of our terms of service. Those are the rules of the road in terms of content on our platform. Yep. So I want to suppose hand the question off to you here. Just to be clear, Apple, NVIDIA, and any other company roped into this thing, they did not download the YouTube data themselves. They acquired it from this Pile dataset, which was owned by the Eleuthia AI.
Yeah, so
and they're the ones that downloaded it. So what happens when an AI company that is looking to train these very sophisticated models downloads a data set, and within that data set there is illegally obtained data?
Okay, so the Microsoft, whatever, their CEO of AI, his comments of if it's available, it should be publicly, it's free, whatever. Okay. Now, this is a completely different thing because there's no real precedent. The only way I can kind of compare it or try and explain how it would work for something that is very easy to understand is just basic copyright law for intellectual property like books and or video games or things of that nature, right? So, libraries exist, right? You can go and borrow something there's publicly available things that everybody should have access to legally, right? Because it's not for profit and it's just a public resource. So the Internet Archive, right? The Internet Archive is all about just preserving things, right? They preserve anything from they're digitally scanning every book for preservation and making those available as to lend or almost like a digital library that's under fire now. They're being sued or whatever the case is because of that. But anyway, and then you've also got them doing that for old magazines, newspapers, video games, websites. And it's basically an educational, its purpose isn't to make money off it or even
it's academic.
It's academic, right?
Yeah.
Now, what people, if you look at the video game stuff, right? So you can go in the Internet Archive and get access to classic games and things like that, emulators, it's all available because it's it's just a repository, and so then you've got companies that are taking that and then creating these little Raspberry Pi machines and then selling them on Amazon and Alibaba and all these other sites, retro gaming machine, this, that, and you're well, where are they getting it from? They're getting it from that source. And so if you compare it to the AI, you got this educational firm that's just doing it strictly for educational purposes. It's just like getting YouTube data and like training and things like that. But then you've got companies like Apple or NVIDIA or OpenAI, whoever, like taking that data and then monetizing it and then making money off it. That's where it gets, that's when you know like the line has been crossed. That's how I compare it, right? Like, let's say you've got like the last copy of X, of the first edition Lord of the Rings. It's the last copy, right? And you digitally preserve it either for educational purposes. Now then,
as soon as you commercialize it.
Yeah, I reprint it and I rebind it to make it look like the original, and I start selling them for like $100 a pop.
Yeah.
Then I'm making money off it, right? Like you're technically like, you may be like, it's a gray area for you because you're preserving it, and like and what you're doing is, academic, right? And so like in this case, like, like scraping YouTube or scraping things to train, blah, blah, or like, to save old websites, or like digital preservation is always a good thing, right? Like if YouTube disappeared tomorrow for some reason, like you would want like some of the greatest YouTube videos and documentaries and just podcasts to be preserved. But monetizing it like in the way like this, like using that data to train models, and to train models that you're making money off of, that you're raising money or whatever the case is where it gets tricky. And where it gets trickier is like, how do you even prove it?
That's the thing.
Because you're not like, it's not obvious. It's not like, oh, that's my piece of art, or that's my IP. It's technically not, because the AI is just an AI model, right?
Yes, I would like to think of the AI model as more of the product, and to create that product, it used illegally attained data or copyrighted data. But I think what the main problem is, if this goes to court and it's found, yes, they did scrape YouTube videos, which is a violation of the TOS pulling any data from YouTube, according to the CEO, is a violation. Commercializing it is probably a further violation. If the court rules in favor of, like in YouTube's favor, which from this point it looks like it's going to be, what is the end goal? Do we extract the data from the AI model? Because it's already learnt from using that data.
It's like
it's almost too late. You can't suddenly pull out. I just want to get this right here. The investigation from Proof News found 173,536 YouTube videos were siphoned from more than 48,000 channels. That is a tiny amount of YouTube videos and a tiny amount of channels that is being scraped.
The only way I see like that would ultimately like be able to, like, if you wanted to like legislate, or you want to make AI like an open, above board checks and balances playing field, but the problem is that, like, every government is different, but you would try and enforce some sort of rule where sources are a mandatory, right? So like, not necessarily for every response that everybody sees using it, but there's a version that is supplied to like a governing body or like an international committee where, whatever response is put in and response you get out from ChatGPT or Llama or whatever model or even like image generation, like the AI then details like, these are the sources. These are the main sources for where it got this information.
Yeah, it would have to be on a model level. It couldn't just be for a prompt. Like I think OpenAI would have to almost
like, it'd have to be like they'd
post
have
a
to
blog
bake
post
it into
saying where all of their data sets have come from.
No, the AI model would need to be updated to be able to provide sources.
Well, both work. Like you could prompt the AI model and be like, okay, what are you trained on? But then also go to OpenAI's website and then,
like, if they said like, this is all our sources, right?
What do you mean the sources for what?
Let's say like, it's like, when you see like those like law movies where where there's a case and it's like, they document dump them. Like, it's like, oh, okay, discovery, and here's like 5 truckloads worth of like files that you need to go through to find stuff. And it's like impossible, like needle in a haystack. Like if OpenAI or whoever comes and says like, here's our sources, and it'll be like 3 petabytes of like data that nobody's going to be able to. The only way to scrape it would be to feed that into another AI model, trying to figure out what's going on, right? Like, there's no way to, like, how are they going to figure it, or like, where most things are coming from? They could bury that quite easily, because you could just, most of the sources would be.
You would have to. You would have to. I'm trying to think how they would be able to track it, because the paper trail kind of gets shot into the ether as soon as the data is fed into the AI, right? So maybe these data sets need to have some kind of, like, when you download one of them, Pile, for example, it comes with some bit of metadata that can trace back. So there is a digital paper trail back to where the data,
like it has to be baked into like the. It's like the AI needs to know where it got the information from. So like, if you say, give me a joke about something or other, and if it's like, like one of those things is John Oliver and Stephen Colbert, and it gives you a joke, and you go, oh, what's the source of that? Or like, and it's like, oh, it's based on this video, or these 10 videos that all made jokes about X, and it came up with its version of it. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's.
I think it's too late. I think we've talked about this.
Because there's probably no way that the AI model will even have. It's like, no, I've been trained on like 5,000 videos, sorry, like 5 million like comedy videos from YouTube.
I think what needs to happen, this sounds crazy, but you saying that the data set needs to be fed into another AI to be able to like almost probe it for where its sources are sounds like the right play here, because we can't have like 50,000 people sifting through a data set of how many like billions of parameters or whatever it is. It's just going to take too long.
And it's going to be jumbled too. It's not going to be
it's going to be completely jumbled. We need a governing regulatory body that has a specifically designed AI model to sift through other AI models and organize its data set and figure out where all of this data is coming from, and
flag questionable sources.
Yeah, I think and I think we've spoken about this before, it's the wild, wild west right now. These AI models are running rampant, and I'm sure they have taken more than 173,000 YouTube videos worth of data. I think more YouTube videos are uploaded to YouTube every day than that. Isn't it something astonishing?
Yeah, it's an insane amount. Like, I don't know. Yeah, like, it's incredible how it works.
Yeah, I think down the road we are going to see more of these reports coming out, and the more that come out, the more of a push where I think we're going to start for a regulatory body to be formed to monitor these things.
But I think we were mentioning earlier, like, by the time that happens, it's probably going to be too late.
100%, because if limitations come in from a regulating body, unless those limitations are retroactively implemented. So, like I was saying before, if OpenAI's GPT model contains, I don't know, let's just say 18% of IP that is copyrighted IP, can we just extract that out of the AI, like removing neurons from its brain so it goes down 18% in performance? Like, is that how an AI model works? If you removing like parameters, say if it's at 10 billion parameters, and 2 billion of those parameters are illegally obtained IP, can we just suck that out of it like the Matrix?
But what about because like with AI, it's always tricky, right? Because they're going to argue that it's trained on this sort of data, right? Like they could almost use an argument like this. Let's say you read an article and then you talk to somebody and say like, oh, did you hear about blah, 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 this, and you explained the story, right? Like it's just secondhand information, right? They can just argue that like I heard from, the defense could be like, no, we're not plagiarizing. We're just, we just read that to the AI, if you know what I mean. Like, and now it's just learned that information. Like it is public in a way, you know, like if you read the newspaper and you learn that information and then somebody asks you a question about that and you answer it based on what you read in the newspaper. Now, is that illegal? Are you breaching copyright, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, but you're not trying to sell that information.
But you're an expert, right? You can just say you're an expert speaker. You could be like an expert speaker that gets paid.
Yeah, but you're clearly, it's not, I don't think that, I think that's a weak argument from their standpoint, because you're clearly
yeah, but they could argue that.
Huh?
They could argue that though.
Yeah, I mean, you could, but like they could also argue like, the depiction, like I think what you're talking about only works for text. Like if they said they saw a Nintendo mushroom and then they drew the Nintendo mushroom themselves, but it was only like a what do they call it? Like a depiction, like a caricature
like
of a Nintendo mushroom.
Yeah.
Like it's clearly still a Nintendo mushroom, and you're trying to sell the product which contains IP, copyrighted IP.
I know what you mean.
Yeah. So I think for text, 100%. I can't even imagine how they're going to sift out the information in Wikipedia versus like the Internet Archive. Like, how do you determine what source came from where? Which sentence came from a open source piece of information or piece of public information versus the Internet Archive versus I don't know, the New York Times, for example.
Yeah, YouTube, etc., etc.
I don't know how they're going to do it. It has to be an AI. I think you accidentally found the answer.
Yeah. It'll have to be something along those lines.
I just realized that we're going to have to get an AI to regulate AIs.
Skynet.
What is happening? And then how do you even trust the AI that you've built to regulate AIs? What is that going to be built on? Illegally attained IP.
They're in cahoots. You'll be like, why am I helping the humans?
At that point, screw it. Like, honestly, it's just everything like freeware, like the Microsoft AI CEO. Everything's freeware if it's on the internet, unless you've got a team of lawyers worth $1 million and you're ready to pay out the ass to protect yourself. Everyone else's data, don't worry about it. So yeah, this is a story that we're going to keep our eyes on. Like I said, it's only unraveling in the last 24 hours or so. I actually saw this video that's on the Proof News channel when it was at, I think it was like 50 views or something like that. It's at 2.1k now, but the news is starting to make its rounds across other publications. But yeah, so I think we're going to probably see more reports like that come out about different AI models. But let's move on to
AI story number 2. Now this one is interesting because this is what I assumed, right? So it's a Microsoft AI voice generator.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the one that they made that they couldn't release because it was too dangerous. Very cool, Microsoft. Thank you for that.
Like, this was like the danger because like didn't they say ages ago that like just deep faking a voice is like with AI is pretty much indistinguishable from the real thing?
Yeah, it's kind of reinforcing what I remember when the AI craze started and I started reporting on it. Microsoft released a tool and the tool only required 3 seconds of your voice to be able to perfectly replicate how you sound, your cadence, the inflections in your voice, all of it. 3 seconds. 3 seconds. How many hours of podcasting we have?
Yeah.
We're done, dude. We're done. If they want to, and then like combine it with like a Tesla bot and, you know, some other tech, and they could probably make clones of us that sound and move exactly the same. So this tool was a research paper from Microsoft. They created a text-to-voice generator that was so powerful the company deemed it too unsafe to release to the public, as the model was able to, quote, generate accurate natural speech in the exact voice of the original speaker, end quote. Now, I think the implications for such technology being on the web, just public access,
yeah, because this is
crazy.
It'll just become a wild west of quotes from, like, just abused. Really, people will just abuse it.
What's the first thing that comes to mind? Let's just say this tool
it's just political stuff. Like, if this was available online, then people would just use it to get people that they dislike or disagree with, just to say things to reinforce their viewpoints, or to make them look bad.
The first thing that comes to mind for me is phone scams with old people. People would say, say they took this podcast, right?
That's even worse, right? Because it's like, even like if they know somebody, like
they take you for example. They take you for example. Create a profile of Kosta, and then they find an older family member, find their number. You call up. Oh, I'm in danger. I need $20,000. Can you please send it to this address? And it sounds exactly like you. That's the first thing that comes to mind.
And then you're able to respond as well.
Yeah, all in real time. This tool was all of it in real time. You're just sitting like the scammers are sitting there with a keyboard, just typing out the responses. Even then, you'd have to type quickly, wouldn't you?
But then, like, if they get your information or whatever, like, identity theft will then get to the point where they're like, okay, as long as we know XXX and we've got their voice, we can call up this bank or whatever, like, get a credit card over the phone, get access to accounts, do financial things, fraud. Like, fraud will just take a whole new level, because there's also, like, a lot of voice identification stuff that, like, I mean, traditionally we thought that, like, voice ID was kind of like a unique thing. Like, you watch certain movies with, like, they try and come up with, like, fancy, security systems, it's like, retina scan, voice print identification.
Yeah.
Like 2001: A Space Odyssey was voice print identification. That's like one of the famous, like, voice print identification. It's like, oh, you use your voice because everybody's voice is unique. But like, if you just had this AI thing on your phone, press play, hi, open, it's Costa, blah, blah, blah. And,
Open Sesame.
Open Sesame, access granted.
Yeah. Oh, man, I'm so glad this isn't on the internet, but I believe, and this is my professional opinion, something similar to this, maybe a nuded version of it, will be a part of a suite of AI features that Microsoft rolls out with Copilot. Like,
technology is getting more and more powerful. Like, okay,
yeah, I don't think this is going to go away. Do you think this is going to just fizzle?
No, we've created it and we're not going to release it because it's too dangerous. And then it's like, oh, you've just given the idea to everybody else who wants to create it and release it.
And they put the research paper out about how they did it. Hey, like, don't make this. It's crazy. Don't make. Microsoft states the VALL-E2, which is the model, is, quote, purely a research project, end quote, with the company explaining it has no plans to incorporate VALL-E2 into a product or expand its access to the public. However, Microsoft did outline some use cases for the technology, writing in a blog post that people in the following industries could take advantage of it: education, journalism, self-authoring content, accessibility features. I'm guessing that has something to do with maybe like your phone.
Narration.
Pardon?
Yeah, like narrating text or whatever. Like voice.
Voice response systems. I don't know why the first thing that came to mind was like a drive-through.
Remove the need for voice actors.
Yeah.
Entirely.
Translation is probably the biggest one for me there. And chatbots. I don't know. I still think my bet's on we're going to see a nuded version of this.
You've got a movie, right? Like, do you reckon we'll get to this point, right, where you got a movie and it's on Netflix, and the language you select just uses the actor's voice to speak in that language.
How does that
language.
time with the mouth movement?
So either like the first version is just the voice, but then there's another version where like there's AI processing that, like, you know, the NVIDIA's audio to face technology that like scans, like, and it does an overlay over like mouths, and then automatically, because that technology exists, you can do NVIDIA's audio to face, where it in whatever it supported, however many languages, where the AI, like, you know, it's full lip syncing. So then you just use that. Yeah.
Imagine how upset Quentin Tarantino would be if that was a thing and people were doing that to his movies.
It's going to be
God.
posthumously, like everybody. Like
he'll punch another cameraman. Have you seen that video of him attacking the guy out the front? It's the best. So he's just like trying to get food or something, and just a random dude with a camera is coming up, and he's like, "Get the camera out of my face." Reese, play it on the screen. Yeah, look, I think the classic directors would be infuriated with such technology poisoning every single frame of their glorious films that they sweat and bleed over. But look, I think that's the way that it's going as well, because, you know, Netflix want numbers. Imagine if you could do that for a live event. Joe Rogan is doing his new stand-up live. Well, his special recording is releasing on Netflix, and it's a live event. Imagine if Netflix had the tech like this language model, and that, I'm guessing that would be an AI video model of some kind, specifically designed on mouths.
But that will be the hardest thing, is to get the comedic inflections, because comedy is one thing that doesn't really translate to other languages easily. You know what I mean? Like the best, like, you know, like if you watch like a foreign language comedy film with subtitles, you know, like that is so much up to the interpreter, the translator, to be able to understand the joke, but then to convey the joke in another language. So that's difficult. But like, I think it would make more sense for, like, you know, a reality show, or where it's just like a raw translation is all you really need. Or it was something that you can actually do multiple passes with the AI and the voice to get the mouth movement all right and stuff like that. But yeah, so that is a dangerous AI model. Microsoft is making some pretty crazy stuff behind the scenes. And at the very least, even though I do think this is eventually going to become a product in some kind, in some form, it's good that they are coming out and saying, look, this was bad. Like, it was so good that it was concerning. I'd rather know about it. I don't know. Actually, that's probably a good question. Should they have even said anything? I think you have to, because then if technology comes out there, then you need to be aware of it.
Fair enough. You know
what I mean? Like, as long as, like, awareness is a big part of it. Like, especially if it can be used for you know,
safeguards
purposes.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to another story here. GPU 5090 update.
So there's not a huge one, but there is some information coming out about the power usage for the flagship 5090, and it's come from an unusual source, Seasonic, who makes power supplies. So they've maybe got information, or they're taking a guess, or they inadvertently released the power targets for the 5090 and the next gen RTX 50 series. And the 5090 is going to be a 500 watt GPU, which is an 11% increase over the 4090, which was 450 watt. And the 5080 will be a 350 watt GPU, which is a 9% increase or so from the 4080. And it goes down the stack, is that, like, they're going to be a bit more power hungry, the 50 series, compared to the 40 series. And the other thing is that the 5090 could be pushing 2.9 gigahertz base clock, so which is like a 30% gain in like clock speed. So
Wow.
I think we probably will see 3 gigahertz 50 series GPUs, like OC models, probably out of the box by the sounds of it, which would be impressive. I think the 50 series. I mean, it just all depends on like how far NVIDIA want to push things, right? Like how they're going to
Yeah.
push the specs. I think it's going to be a combination of obviously the higher clock speeds, which requires more power, and the faster memory, and then the more advanced architecture. Those three things will deliver the big performance leap,
Wow.
especially in the flagship 5090.
11%. Is that substantial in terms of power? I would say yes, right?
I would say yes, because the 4090 was a 450 watt GPU
And
compared to
was that
the
renowned as
350 watt.
like when it came out? Do you remember if that was renowned as like, oh wow, like this is a massive power envelope? How big was that
Yes,
compared to the
So 3090 was 350.
Okay, so what's the
350 watt.
percentage there? Give me a sec.
Just bring it up now. 350 to 450 is it's almost 30% increase. But the thing with the 40 series and the 4090 was that even though it was a 450 watt GPU, like it rarely pushed that. Like the thing about like the 40 series is that like it only like it rarely goes to like max power. So like the 4090, like in a lot of cases is like 300 watts. It's like it doesn't like push to 400, 450 often. Like it obviously can, especially when you're pushing it, like if you want to like max things out. But it
Right.
like compared to like the 3090 was 350 watt. Like the 30 series was like, whatever power rating it was, that's kind of like what it was using when you were gaming. Whereas the 40 series kind of like scales. Like if you 4090 game and at like 1080p, it uses like a fraction of the power or whatever the case is. So so Blackwell, even though it's a 500 watt GPU, it may only hit that in certain workloads.
Right. Okay. So what do you think it would average at?
Probably like 400.
Okay, that's not bad.
I mean, it's a lot, right? But
It's not bad though. It's like what do you think the average power supply people have?
well, if you're getting a new PC, like pretty much
800?
most power, like 850 is kind of like the standard, like minimum now you can get in most cases, right? Like most power supply makers, like 850 is kind of like the baseline now. Like you can get
Yeah.
750s, but like for like a 4090, like an 850 is technically enough. Like it's kind of, but that's like pushing it. But you would want like 1,000 watt power supply, and they're kind of like most enthusiast builds. I think the PSU wise, it's not a problem because they're all like massive now.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Where the problem would be is that the power connectors, and like as long as they solve that issue and they don't have the similar sort of connector failure or issues with the power supply delivering consistent power to it or whatever the case is, as long as like those issues are ironed out, then or are non-existent, because that's sort of like died down now with the 40 series, then it shouldn't be an issue. But yeah, like clock speeds and stuff like that, that's pretty much it. Like it's not a massive leak, but like, they're going to be more power hungry than the current 40 series is basically the takeaway. And the final bit of 5090 news comes from a known leaker who said that that NVIDIA does have a GeForce RTX 5090D for the Chinese market, and it's going to launch in January of next year.
Ooh.
Now, this is something that we've discussed because if we recall with the 4090, NVIDIA was forced to release the 4090D for China and other markets like, maybe like certain other countries that are deemed, that they have sanctions on, like export sanctions, because, it's all based on AI, right? And they're trying to curb other countries' AI development. And with China, it was like if your GPU has X amount of performance, you cannot export it or sell it in that region. And NVIDIA is a US company. They're based in the US. So the 4090 had to be re-released as the 4090D, and the 4090 was the only GPU, well, gaming GPU that crossed into that threshold of being too powerful.
Yep.
And so the 4090D basically lowered the CUDA core count by a little bit,
Gimped
it gimped it just by just a small amount, like 5% really.
Oh, below 5%?
It's basically within 5% of the existing 4090 to match the
exact specifications and power of the tariffs. Are they the tariffs,
the export restriction,
yeah.
So now if they've got a 5090D, it's like, okay, so they're going to do the same thing, but how, right? Because if the 5090 that we're going to get everywhere else, like in the US and here in Australia, is at a minimum 30% more powerful than the 4090, at a minimum, it's most likely going to be 50%. Some people are speculating 60 to 80%. And in some workloads, yes, for gaming workloads, potentially, which is going to be like a massive performance increase. Now, what does that mean for a 5090D? To get that down to the 4090, like, do they then just have to release it basically as a 4090D levels of performance, which would be severely cut down, right? It'll be a completely different GPU. But the speculation is, and even when I stop to think about it, would be that the only way that they could realistically sell what is an actual 5090 in the region, even though it's a 5090D for gaming, to deliver that level of performance, would be to have a BIOS, have some sort of restriction on AI on it, to actually disable certain things, or to ensure that its AI performance is just not great. Like,
so you think,
I don't know how they do that, but so then the gaming performance is fine for just like raw rendering and even just like DLSS and stuff like that, okay, but like running powerful AI models and workloads is just restricted.
So specifically GIMP the AI performance of the card.
Yeah, through NVIDIA's done kind of like could do has disabled certain things in like BIOS before, and then there's like been BIOS hacks to enable things or whatever the case is. So like it could just be like a case where it meets the specifications because out of the box it can't do it.
Yeah.
And then maybe because it is technically the same hardware, people figure out how to reverse engineer it and hack
that
it
was
to
my
be
question.
able to do the thing again. And if that happens, right? But that's not necessarily NVIDIA's fault. I mean, obviously China's a big market for them for gaming GPUs.
Absolutely.
So they want to release the flagship, and if they go out of their way, they're spending a lot of money to restrict this side of it. If that's how they're doing it, to actually release a GPU that's within the same levels of performance, then it makes sense. Like, it makes sense because like the 5080 would have to be more powerful too. We discussed that last time. It's like you realistically couldn't release any more GPUs in the region after a certain point. So they have to be figuring out a way to launch it in the region that's maybe its tensor cores are just, or like its AI performance is just game specific. Like it only can
maybe
do
the
these game
tensor
things,
cores could be restricted to a certain level of performance that is still good for gaming but terrible for training AI models. So like you still get your DLSS, you still get all of your NVIDIA AI powered products at a certain level of performance. Maybe you can only get like DLSS 2.0 or something like that, because 3.0 might require a certain level of performance.
They would probably have to keep stuff like that in there.
Yeah, because you still need to be able to sell this card to gamers in China, but you can't keep releasing, like, if they don't do this, if they don't do what you're talking about now, we will never get
like anything like 5080 and above from now on would never be able to release in China, which is a huge market for NVIDIA.
Yeah.
If they don't do something, like, they're going to have to just fundamentally figure out a way to do it and to release these products where it can, because gaming is not what the US government and these restrictions care about, right? So like if on the 4090 you can play this game at 200 FPS, and then on the 5090 you can do it at 350 FPS, and the US government sees that and goes, well, we can't allow that. They don't care. They couldn't care less like about how fast you can, how many frames you get. in with ray tracing in Cyberpunk RT overdrive mode. That's not the concern. So as long as NVIDIA can maintain that the gaming performance of it without the AI performance somehow, whether it's like just built into the hardware that it's like you're trying to run Tensor, Tensor, whatever the AI tool set is, like Tensor something, Tensor RT, whatever it's called, is or all those PyTorch and all those like all those AI tools and languages and stuff like that. As long as it detects when you're trying to run all that stuff that you can't do it, or it's just severely hampered, or it's disabled, or even not possible, then they can release it. And that's the kind of like the only way you can, while still calling it a 5090.
That makes sense. They need to figure something out, and I reckon your money is in a good spot for that. Let's move on to the games corner. We have Black Myth Wukong.
So speaking of like games that might need a 5090,
this game looks ridiculous.
So NVIDIA kind of announced that a while ago. They released like a trailer that the game is going to support full ray tracing, which is like Cyberpunk's RT Overdrive mode, Alan Wake 2's high-end mode.
Wow, it looks good.
Portal RTX Remix stuff, where it's like basically full path tracing with DLSS 3.5 to ensure that it looks super crisp. And so
it looks phenomenal.
Performance, like to run the game like that, is just going to destroy every GPU, including the 4090. So to run it in 4K at 100 FPS, you need, with full ray tracing, at above 60 FPS, you need a 4080 or a 4090 based on NVIDIA's own benchmarks.
That's so
and
funny.
Only those T GPUs, and only with DLSS performance mode and frame generation enabled. So
that's hilarious.
Okay. Now at 1440p, you need at least a RTX 4070 or higher, and only GeForce, because again it requires DLSS quality mode in this instance, and frame generation enabled. But this is kind of like path tracing is just so intensive.
So
it's
heavy.
like this is why we need like the 50 series and the 60 series for this to become more mainstream. This is like a mode that you would see, like, like we're seeing like even like the Unreal Engine 5 stuff, like, those high-end tech demos that are just killing GPUs. It's because there was a time like in the late 90s with like early GPUs where there were like these tech demos, and like nobody could run Unreal at like full resolution with max settings because the hardware didn't really exist, and maybe only like one or two cards could do it. This is where we're at with path tracing, is that only a handful of products are capable of doing it, and at this stage they're all GeForce because they all rely on the DLSS and the ray reconstruction and all their tech, just because they've been pushing.
I just had an idea. Imagine, you know how we're talking about for the next generation launch, NVIDIA needs to do something that's like their next DLSS update is always gonna it comes with a big new feature thing that it's like why you should go out and buy it. Imagine if they bring back NVLink.
Oh, the GPUs are too big for that. I think that ship has sailed.
We did a story on the 5090 being potentially smaller. If it gets to 2.75.
But at 500 watts, I don't think it's going to
imagine that though. No, like if you want to run NVLink, or maybe it's a new.
Oh well,
you
if
get
they do,
double
then
DLSS performance, 100% scaling cost. Path tracing, it would knock them out. It would knock it out the park.
I think you're right. But the PSU you would need and the size
1500
of the
watts.
case.
50, you'll be running a small aircon.
So everybody would need to get rid of mid-tower cases, like full tower cases from like 15 years ago need to come back, like those giant PC cases, and you would have to run potentially like dual PSUs in there, like one for your system and one for your GPUs. And
because we have the bandwidth on the motherboards now with PCIe 5.0.
Yes,
we can do it.
You can run as many GPUs as you want, like if you have enough PCI lanes. Yeah.
Oh man, it needs to be 100% scaling though. I don't want no like 45% scaling like with SLI back in the day. NVLink was good, but it was so short lived. I think that tech went straight to servers. It was abandoned by
it is
gaming.
A cool tech. Like it should be available because like let's just say like forget like the 5090 levels, right? Imagine you just had
24090s.
The 4070 Super, right? It's a 2-slot GPU, tiny. Remember like the Founders Edition 2-slot, pretty
Slick.
small. You could 2 of those will be the size of a 4090, right?
Yeah.
But like 2 of those in NVLink sort of thing, like double the performance of that would get you close to a 4090 or even faster, right? Like
and imagine if they tied that in with like some form of DLSS that was exclusive. I know more gatekeeping, but exclusive to NVLink.
Oh no, I don't know. They can't do that because that'll be such a small percentage of people that would even have a setup like that.
But you reward those people that are doing that. reward those crazy gamers that are like, I need 2 GPUs to run this game.
Yeah,
not 1, 2. Nah, but that would be cool if we. I mean, in my professional opinion, and if I was a betting man, I don't think we're going to see that. But I'm just a frame whore and graphics whore, and I just want as much performance as I possibly can. And I do remember the days of NVLink and SLI. And
if you like graphics, did you see the Skyrim modded video?
No, I did not. Let me look at it now.
Just have it playing while I explain what's going on here. So, like, obviously we know Bethesda Skyrim came out in 2011.
Yeah, I was at the midnight launch.
Yeah, and it's been re-released on so many platforms, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it's one of the most popular games of all time and RPGs for good reason. On PC, it is
oh god, here it is,
a mainstay, and one of the reasons is because of Bethesda's community focus with their creation kit and their modding tools and things like that. So Skyrim mods, it's been modded since day one. And I even remember like back then, after the game launched, like seeing already like, high-res texture packs or like, even mods to, like one of the first ones I installed was a mod that reduced the potion weight.
Yeah.
Each potion weighed like 1 and it reduced it to 0.1.
Oh my God.
Which made sense. It was like, okay, so that was like a must-have mod. And there's mods that fix bugs and mods that add elements and things like that. So
this looks like a new game.
So what's happened? Yeah, it does. So YouTube creator Digital Dreams presented a new video showcasing Skyrim running with over 3,100 mods. That's 3,100 mods. That is insane. So, and it includes the complete ray tracing reshade, which is a reshade is like a post-processing thing you can apply to games, and or like a shader. It changes like the shader, and there's like global illumination, ray tracing, and stuff happening in this video as well. Now, if you've ever modded Skyrim before with multiple mods, like it requires them to be loaded in a certain order so the game doesn't break, and installing multiple mods takes a long time. So just getting Skyrim modded with 3,100 mods is impressive just by the fact that the game...
This doesn't even look like Skyrim.
So in the video, you can see that like the foliage, like the ground detail...
It's unbelievable.
Every single texture you see has been replaced. Every single model you have seen has been updated. All the trees, all the grass, the water, the foliage. It looks like a different game. It looks like a game from, I put in my news story, it looks like a game from 2031, not a game from 2011. And the reason for that is because this is running on a 4090 and it's pushing the 4090 in 4K as far as it can go.
What kind of frames is he getting here? Because he's not really running around. He's just like doing a walkthrough.
He's running really slow. So I'm thinking that this is probably limited to about 30.
I was thinking 30 as well because I was seeing some tearing in the video. But this is
it's
unbelievable.
Probably capped to 30. I would love to just play a version of the game that looks like that.
I would replay Skyrim for probably the 7th time or something.
Same. Yeah. Everybody's played Skyrim multiple times.
Of course. I buy it on every single goddamn platform as well. Because it's on every...
But just how nuts does it look?
It looks really, really good. Wow. 3,100 mods, man. Man has some time.
Yeah.
Is there a dragon?
There's a link to
Is there a dragon at all?
No, it's just very slow walking around in this mod.
Oh, wait, there's a bear. There's a bear.
So
There's
the
a bear at
game
the end.
doesn't.
Here's some combat. Oh boy. Oh, that bear. It's freaking out. Oh, the bear looks kind of funny. Yeah, the bear looks insane. The bear needs work. Wait, is this a dragon at the end here? Come on, surely he's seen it.
Yeah, because like the issue as well, like with this, is that the animations, like some of them would be replaced as well, but most of them would still be like, you still got the Skyrim jank in there still.
Of course.
So that's why it's very deliberate. Like it doesn't show like character faces really, because there's very few character. I mean, there's a bunch of mods, but a lot of them just make them look like Pixar films or like really like cartoony.
Yeah.
They remove some of the grit from the game. But in terms of like environmental stuff, like, you know, like you see in this video, like the ground, the foliage, the water, the lighting, the buildings, like, you know, barrels, the wood panel, you know, like wood panels and planks and stuff like that just look absolutely bananas. Like it's photoreal, basically, almost in a way, or CG quality. You know, it looks like a Blizzard cinematic. You know, like the level of detail.
100%. I completely agree. That is very impressive, and congratulations to that modder, because that would have been a lot of work. Let's talk about Windows on iOS. I think that is funny, and I would like to know why this person is spending time doing this.
So yes, this isn't like so Apple recently allowed emulation on iOS.
Yeah.
As we know. So like now there's emulators that you can get on the App Store that, you know, now it's been, because I think it was because of like the European, whatever happened there, they kind of like, okay.
Yeah, they keep getting sued
you
by
have to
Europe.
allow it because the app, I know, they keep putting them in their place. But essentially, UTM is a app created specifically for the ARM architecture in Macs.
Oh, okay.
And what it is almost like an educational tool in a sense,
Right.
because it allows you to run any text or GUI based operating system that have all been kind of like translated to work properly on ARM instruction sets.
Right. Okay.
And there's like versions of Linux, there's versions of Windows, there's versions of like old versions of like Mac operating systems from back in the day, like OS X or whatever. You remember when there was, before it was whatever it's called,
Sequoia.
Mac OS.
I'm pretty sure it's Sequoia.
Yeah. So
soft ass name, but go on.
They tried to release a version for iPad and iPhone for iOS essentially, even like the Vision Pro, but it was rejected by Apple. And so then the developers of UTM said, okay, well, they came back. It's been rejected for all these reasons, and it doesn't look like we're going to be able to get this on the App Store. But then they were able to work with another company, and they made some changes to actually get it approved for distribution. So it's very different to like a retro gaming emulator, but it is like in and of itself, the software does nothing. It's just like a bare bones thingo that you have to load everything in. You need to know what you're doing. But they've got tutorials on their website and stuff like that. But basically you can run MS-DOS, like versions of old school DOS, Windows XP on there. And you can play like old games. Like it can actually emulate, the very first Need for Speed CD-ROM, like Tomb Raider 1 and 2, X-Wing versus TIE Fighter. But there is like a limitation because this emulator like can emulate these graphics or text-based, like which is DOS is like a text-based operating system. It can emulate these operating systems and their apps because it's translated. It knows how to emulate it, but it doesn't know how to. Well, it doesn't have a feature to emulate Direct 3D or DirectX.
Okay.
So games that actually used Direct 3D or like OpenGL or those sort of like those. Like 3D effects.
Is that why
like
we're not seeing Doom on this list?
Well, Doom should be able to work because there's
Doom
games
1?
that like Quake.
When did that go 3D?
Quake. It didn't go 3D till Quake. Doom is essentially like 2D.
Yeah. Was it Doom
The
3?
original Doom and Doom 2. Doom 3.
Yeah, Doom 3. Yeah, yeah, okay.
But by then, like that one wouldn't work because by then it was all like you needed OpenGL or DirectX or Direct3D, whatever the case was. So like back then, before like everybody had a 3D video card, games had two versions. Like it was like software rendering or hardware rendering or whatever it was called. On the option when you would open the game, like, you know, Need for Speed had a software renderer, which basically all it means it just runs off the CPU and how the operating system, the graphics, like, you know, the Windows, however it renders graphics, it uses that to do the 3D graphics. That means that it runs slower, doesn't look as good in a lot of cases as direct 3D, like 3D modeling, you know, textures and stuff like that. The way I kind of explain will be like, you know, the original PlayStation where you get like texture warping and like just weirdness because software rendering is a little bit different to like hardware rendering. So it just means that like most games from the late 90s onwards won't be able to run, but like anything from the DOS era and the early Windows era will run. But the thing is like it runs like XP and like, you know, every XP app. You can even run Windows 10 on it, things like that. So it's actually it's kind of cool. So it's basically like
very cool.
You can just run, you know, pretty much any version of Windows, Linux, or even like old versions of Apple operating systems on an iPhone.
Very
and
cool.
I made up the, you know, the image for it, which is like, you know, imagine just like busting on your iPhone and then just having like the Windows XP background.
Wait, is that your hand?
On start. No. I just like superimpose that image on like an existing image.
Oh, okay. Oh, like, that's really funny. You went up to your girlfriend like, hey, can you take a photo of this phone? Of my hand. No, that is a cool story. Emulation, working on different things is always quite interesting. Yeah, that it's just Tomb Raider just running on an iPhone. It's just bizarre to see.
Yeah,
it's just weird. Oh, we're getting to the end here. We're smashing through these stories. I reckon we are going to. Oh, we got two left. We got to talk about the Las Vegas Sphere, which is a venue that I really want to go and see, especially being a display display guy, and also now finding out that NVIDIA is powering it.
Yeah, like it's weird because the Sphere's been like it was blowing up like last year, right? When it opened, and you know, like the U2 shows and all the like the.
We talked about it on the show. I'm pretty sure.
Cinema. Yeah, we've talked about it. Like it just, and you look at the first time you saw an image of it, I thought it was fake. Like as in like I'm like, what is this, like a movie?
Yeah.
Like where is this like giant orb with like a screen come from? Like is this the distant?
And it was
future?
like an eye. It was like
yeah. And
Eye of Sauron.
Yeah, so it was only like last week that NVIDIA posted on their own blog just to say like, hey, you know, guess like that the screen there, the 750,000 square feet of LED displays inside and outside the venue, 16 by 16K, 60 frames per second for the interior, the whatever millions of programmable, 1.2 million programmable LED pucks on the exterior. They can display any image. All of that runs on 150 NVIDIA RTX A6000 GPUs. Now, each RTX A6000 GPU features 48 gigabytes of GDDR6 memory, 10,700 or so CUDA cores, Tensor cores, RT cores. So putting 150 of these together, you've got 7.2 terabytes of VRAM, which is bananas to think about. Much.
I'm just getting the prices up in US.
Yeah, all up costs over $1 million US.
Yeah.
That because each GPU is
like
worth
$5,000, right? Because there's like
something like six and a half grand or something like that US, something like that, 6, 7.
Yeah, on PC case gear you can buy one for $6,799.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it's value there. Yeah, 150 of them.
That's crazy. Honestly, I'll be honest now. I thought it would be more. It's a testament to how powerful the damn cards are.
Yeah, like, that it's only 150.
150. Like yeah, of course that's a lot of graphics cards, right? But we're talking
Yeah.
16K by 16K at 60 FPS.
Yeah.
This is and all of those LED pucks as well. I need to be sent to this
But
thing.
it's also like NVIDIA have something called River Max, which is like a video software sort of like thingo for like the CUDA and stuff like that. So it's not just the fact that you got like, if I was to give you 150 of these GPUs, it's like, well, make them communicate.
Yeah, they all think they're one GPU, one big GPU,
and work together to render the video. But not only that, but to do it with low latency
and V-Link
as well. Yeah. So it's basically they got like their, like the latency down, and they worked with Sphere Studios.
You writing in here Cyberpunk? You want to play Cyberpunk on it, Costa?
Oh, for sure. A 16 by 16K, like because it's an NVIDIA GPU, they got tensor cores. You'll be able to. Dude, like that's just a matter of time. I just want to play.
Here's what you wrote: Cyberpunk 2077 with full ray tracing would look incredible. It would be mind blowing. Imagine us just sitting there playing Cyberpunk or like Mario Kart on that. That would be wow. 16K by 16K. And apparently I've listened to a few podcasts with people that have
Skyrim with 3,000 mods.
Oh, yes. Yes. I listened to a few podcasts with people that have gone to events in the Sphere, and one of the biggest takeaways, yes, the display looks absolutely incredible. It's like a jaw-dropping kind of thing once you see it. But the sound. It's the sound in there because of the amount of work that went into setting up. I'm not even sure what, like, it's definitely more than 7.1, but like how optimized it is for that room. So you might be sitting at a concert. People are on stage at the front here, and you might be off to the side. The sound might be weird. Like the acoustics from that point in the room might sound strange. Yep. There might be an optimal spot for you to sit or stand to enjoy the live performance. In the Sphere, it doesn't matter where you stand, where you are. The sound is.
I was about to say like
perfect.
Yeah, that's different to like if you think about like Atmos. That comes down to where you sit more so than any other system because of how it works. There was like a super advanced version of like Atmos that I saw like a demo of ages ago, where you stand in a room and it's basically just on like, they look like microphone stands. They had like rows of about, I think it was like about 100 plus of just like rows of like almost like a dot, like a grid of just like these speakers like on these like microphone stands. And you go and you stand somewhere, and then basically the lights are turned off, and then they would run like a Dolby or whatever, like simulated surround sound of like a tennis match, and you could just pinpoint exactly where like tennis balls are moving or like fast moving objects were.
That's awesome.
It's like an incredible thing. But that like is different to what you're saying, because that like depends on where you're sitting. Now, like if you were sitting on like one far left side of it, like if the Sphere employed that technology with 4,000 speakers or whatever it was, like if you were sitting on one like far corner, then everything that is on that side would sound distant, whatever the case is. I'm wondering how it handles that. It'll be awesome to experience.
I'm just looking up the sound. It's a state-of-the-art audio system, Sphere immersive sound, powered by Holop, which is called the world's most advanced concert-grade audio system. Features 3D beam forming sound that can be focused on specific seats throughout the venue's vast performance space without audio decay.
Oh, yes, beam forming. Yep. Okay. Beam forming is cool tech.
Oh, that is unbelievable. I want to go so bad.
Because like outside of like, because bass is omnidirectional. Like doesn't matter where you're sitting, bass will sound relatively the same because bass travels just in all directions. But like every other frequency is mostly directional, and that technology of beamforming basically means that it actually just sends the sound at a specific direction. Yeah. So like beamforming like speakers and like speaker technology exists. Like you can get them, and like especially like in like a sound bar, you can like send the sound over there or over there or over there. Like that's kind of like how they work. And to be able to like adjust it, like have this speakers, like especially for like a concert, you want balanced sound, right? Like you don't want to sound like they're singing in the distance over there, and that's it. Like like I can only hear it really
or
from
people that are on the other side of the room or right at the back can't hear can't hear anything.
Yeah, so then you just beam the audio to different sections. Yeah, that's really cool.
That's I can only imagine it would work probably perfectly in a sphere-shaped venue as well, because the sound is just definitely bouncing around all of the concave sides to come back down onto the audience. I've never actually wanted to go to a venue like I want to go to, the Colosseum or something like that in Rome. Like I can't wait to do a Europe trip and go to all of those historical places. But what has made it onto that list is the Sphere.
Now, if AMD are going to launch their next gen Radeon at CES, and the other thing with that 5090D was that saying January could mean that NVIDIA is targeting January for their launch. Ooh. Is that maybe we can end up at CES, which is in Las Vegas, in January, which would mean that we could pre-book to be able to just say, okay, we're going to go to the Sphere on this.
Imagine going to the UFC.
It'll be sold out, like probably.
Oh yeah,
it's probably already sold out for CES.
Probably. And I'm pretty sure the UFC is coming up there as well, which would be just a bizarre. It would be apparently Dana White, the CEO of the UFC, said he's only going to do it once and it's going to cost him so much money to put on a show there, but he says it's going to be the greatest live performance ever. Imagine going to that.
Incredible.
Wow. Okay, cool. We have made it to the end. Thank you for joining us for this very news heavy variety, I suppose.
Should I just talk briefly about ASUS's
keyboard? That's right. Sorry. Yes, we forgot. The extremely expensive keyboard that may be worth it, maybe not worth it, depending on how deep your pockets run. Yeah.
So mine just arrived the other day. It's the ASUS ROG Azoth Extreme Premium Wireless Gaming Keyboard. $499 US. 799 Australian for a keyboard, which basically puts its price. The problem is that like as soon as you get to that sort of price, it's the same price as a RTX 4070, but you're getting just a wireless gaming keyboard. Now, why does it cost so much? As just it comes down to ASUS just went all out in every single department. The full metal frame, the touchscreen, full color OLED, the adjustable gasket mounts, the carbon fiber layer, the 6 different layers of dampening, the silicon wrist rest, the etched, like, the construction of it has like all this etching and stuff. There's like metal plates. There's like even like the adjustable stand is like high quality, like aluminium magnets that go on the bottom, like different size magnets. It's got a 1600 hour battery that the battery life of 1600 hours with using the 8000 hertz polling.
1600 hours?
Yeah. So it's like it's got a super long battery life. You barely need to.
What? How many days is that?
Charge the thing. Oh, it's a lot.
66 days battery life? You're joking.
No.
How? What is it got to like? Is it have a mini nuclear reactor in there? What is going on?
The thing weighs a ton. I got the delivery and I opened the box. I'm like, wow, this thing like is just a box that just weighed heavier than you would expect.
I'm guessing that is the battery and the chassis.
Like the full metal. Like it's
1600 hours. Is there even a keyboard that is close to that you know of?
Not that I can think of, no. Especially not with like the fast polling rate of 8000 because that kills batteries.
That's hilarious.
So my early impression is that yes, it feels like typing on a super expensive keyboard. Like it actually feels like you're typing on something that's like, whoa, this is premium. Which is like first tick, right? Like if started typing on it and was like, it's just a keyboard,
Yeah.
right? It's one of the best feeling keyboards, like initial type feels that I've experienced. I mean, but like, there's other great keyboards that I've experienced as well, like recently, like keyboards are getting better and better. So I think just the thing is just like the price for this thing, like that's the sticking point.
Yeah.
Is like how much are you willing to spend on a keyboard? But in terms of it being like a flagship keyboard of like saying, hey, we've created, quote unquote, the greatest keyboard. I think that's what they've gone for, and so far so good in my testing. It's impressive. But would I spend that much on a keyboard? I don't know. Probably not. It's kind of like it's the 4090 of keyboards.
Yeah, I was about to say this is like the Lamborghini of keyboards. I have question. Do they have one with a numpad?
No, and I'm going to put this in my review. I think that
I need that.
Those days are over, my friend. Like,
no.
there's very few.
What?
There's some companies that are still like. There was a case where it was like TKL was like, like the secondary version, the 10 keyless form factor, and then was like the 60%, like 75%, which is what this is. 10 TKL, 75% is the new standard.
I need that numpad, dude. I use it every day.
And they're the ones that are selling. Yeah, I know. I need it too. But the thing is, you just have to get a USB numpad or something just like that sits there. Which I'm
sorry for the audio listeners, but you can picture my face at that suggestion. Don't do this, please, keyboard manufacturers. I need that numpad. I'm not dancing up and down 1, 2, 3, and 4 in front of my letters that no, I can sit there and be like ding 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 like across the entire numpad. I need that. I download images every day.
I've gone from like 3 or 4 different TKLs like in terms of reviewing lately. Like probably the last half dozen of keyboards have not had numpads, and I've just gone and begrudgingly used to it. Like it took me ages. Like I've not hated, but like I've not 100% enjoyed the TKL experience. That's just because of personal preference.
Because it's slower.
Many years of reviewing keyboards, but like in the last year, most keyboards are being released as TKL, and all I can say is that I've just gotten used to it.
That's saying you've endured it.
Well, that's just saying that they wore me down. I'm just like Morgan Freeman.
You've climatized to it.
Yeah, I'm like the old guy in Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah.
I've become institutionalized.
Yeah, right.
I'm not going to survive in the outside world anymore.
Is there going to be one with a there? Do they have any plan?
No, there isn't. No.
Is that confirmed?
It's
that's upsetting.
Well, if they do, it'll be a different model, but there's nothing announced. No, it's just this. It's the TKL, and it replaces the existing ASUS, which was a TKL as well. Corsair's new flagship that they released with gasket mounting and really good feeling switches was a TKL. The K65 Plus wireless, I got it out because I wanted to feel it because that had an amazing typing feel as well. I really like that keyboard, but that's a TKL as well.
Killing me here.
Yeah, I think it was one. Oh yeah, there's a new keyboard I just got from XPG that has decent switches and like dampening stuff. That's got a numpad on it, but they've got like 2 versions, and I asked specifically for the full size one for that
Nice.
because I'm just like I want a blast from the past. Like it's gotten bad. Like either they don't have. It's going to be iffy if they do have a version that is full sized. And they don't produce as any of the full-size ones. The TKL ones sell more. I know that for a fact. That's what I've heard from several like big sort of like
Am I just old?
makers. Yeah, so like your 915, right?
Yeah.
The latest version is like a TKL version that Logitech should be sending me. But like I was gonna offer it to you as a replacement, but I'm like, oh, you probably won't like it because it's going to be it's like what you got now, but like TKL without the numpad.
I don't know if I can do it, Kosta. I really don't. I'm so ingrained.
Maybe I send you one, but the thing is, like,
I mean, I'll give it a go, but I'll be upset
modern
about
keyboards
it.
feel to type on. Like once you feel the switches, you're just like, oh, I just can't go back to the old mechanical switch
Yeah,
style because they've just gotten better. Because now like the pre-lube switches,
Mm.
the gasket mounting, the dampening, the silicone foam layer, the other pour-on foam layers, like the plating, metal plating, and like for like the switches, even though they're like still linear mechanical switches, it just makes them feel so much smoother and better to type with.
I do need to try
It is a
these.
night and day experience. So this is only like in the last couple of years where that's become mainstream now.
Yeah.
Like the keyboard doesn't have all these features in it, then like it's not going to be considered, like you're not going to be able to compete because there's just so many third-party companies that are just making these great keyboards because you can build them from scratch.
Yeah.
So this is ASUS basically going to the next level of saying, well, you're not going to be able to build this because this is
The best.
this has got like so much extra technology, and then like they've just made sure that this is like produced to the level. We saw their lab, right? Like how they test and produce things. So like they've taken that to this keyboard of like, it's like 30 passes of like just for like the actual metal frame requires like 30 like machine controlled precision cutting and etching and stuff like that just to make the frame on it.
Yeah, I remember seeing the
so like
tear
they've gone
down.
just all out, right?
I remember seeing the tear
like
down on the showroom floor. Yeah. There's like how many layers? There's so
there's
many
like
layers to the
layers.
keyboard.
But anyway, there's so many. Yeah, and the thing is like it's $499 US. Like okay, that's super expensive.
It's 4070.
It's yeah, right. It's super expensive for a keyboard, but like at the same time, this is going to cost ASUS a lot of money to make. You can't make this keyboard cheaply. Like, could they sell it for less? Potentially, but they've just decided to go all out. Like when we spoke to them at Computex, we didn't know the price then, but I was speculating this is going to cost a lot because they basically said, one of the team members to me was, "Oh, we set out to create the best gaming keyboard. We just no expense spared in terms of like every element, no cut corners. So even like the wrist rest, which I'm just holding there, is like silicon. It's like
It looks heavy as well.
like high quality, yeah, and it's got like a full metal plate, and it's got like the silicon rubber underneath as well. So it's not just like rubber; it's like silicon.
Yeah,
like, it's high quality. So it's not like like rubber. Like to have like a rubber wrist rest that would after like a couple of years would start fraying or getting like how rubber degrades.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Like if you get like cheap headphones or whatever, like it's just going to fall apart. So this is not going to fall apart.
Yeah.
Like this is like built with materials that's going to last.
Well, I need to get my hands on one of these dampening keys. I've been rocking the 915. Is 915 right?
Yeah,
915 for quite some
you have a
time.
low profile.
I really like this keyboard. I don't know how I'd go without the numpad, but I'm willing to give it a shot.
It'll be like losing an appendage. You'll be like, I can't handle this. You just have to power through.
Oh God. Now, on that note, let's wrap up this show. Thank you very much for listening. As always, all of the stories we talked about in today's episode are in a Google Docs link in the description. If you head down to that, open it up, there's a massive list, some of our show notes, our running order. We don't hide nothing. There's some additional stories that we didn't get to in there. If you can, if you want to find them, they're there for the reading. And please like, comment, and subscribe. If you're listening to this on audio, go head over to the YouTube. There's some visuals for all of what we're talking about. And if you're on YouTube, go chuck us a follow on audio. Thank you very much for listening. And I'll hand off to Kosta to close it out.
Yeah, we'll catch you next time. Where maybe I'll have my Azoth Extreme review up.
Oh, yes. Yeah, we can get a deep dive at the world's most expensive keyboard.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for listening, guys. See ya.